As a teacher in my classroom, I can tell you about the countless times students came to me scared and lonely and trying to figure out what they were feeling. As a teacher in my classroom, I can tell you how many times students longed for inclusion. And the job of educators is to make sure that all students, every student, feels included. My official position as a teacher, as a member of Congress, as a human being, is that all people matter, even transgender youth. A 2022 CDC study said that only 1.8% of high school student athletes identify as trans. We are talking about a very small percentage. 82% of transgender youth have considered suicide, and 40% have attempted suicide. So this hearing, this legislation, these conversations further put a target on the backs of these students who are already in the scariest times of their lives. School sports are supposed to promote inclusion, are supposed to support student well-being, are supposed to motivate and make students feel proud of who they are. That is not what this bill does. I can tell you that I understand that this conversation is uncomfortable for many people, and there are so many in this room and watching, and even in America, who don't know how to have this conversation. I can tell you an easy place to start is to listen and commit to learning what it means and what is happening. My job as a teacher and as a representative now is to support all students, not all students with the exception of transgender youth. When we hear words from the other side like eradicated and erased, when we're talking about transgender youth, we cannot eliminate a population of people. If we want to have a conversation about how we include transgender youth, then let's do that. But to pretend they don't exist or to promote policies meant to set them aside is just wrong. I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment. And I can tell you, if you are still uncertain or unsure about where you stand on transgender athletes in sports, I'll give you an easy exercise. Take out the word trans. Insert disabled, or black, or native, or any other group you can think of, and then ask yourself how comfortable you are with discriminating against them. And as a final thought, I can tell you that the God that I serve teaches me to love my neighbor, all of my neighbors. Doesn't matter who they are, or how they identify, or what their needs are. And I can tell you that with that love, I use my time, my energy, my effort to advocate for the least of us, for the most marginalized, for the people who have no one else speaking up for them. And right now, in this hearing, those people are trans youth. I urge a no vote on this amendment. I urge my colleagues to sit back and have some honest and real discussions about how we can help students achieve academic success, how we can make sure all students felt included and a part of the education process, and that we can use our agency and our advocacy and our power to legislate to help all students and all Americans. And with that, I yield back. One of the most dangerous provisions of this bill is the banning of books. Across our nation, books that illustrate our rich history and our diversity are being pulled from library shelves. According to PEN America's Index of School Book Bans, of the 2,500 books banned last year, 41% of these books explicitly addressed LGBTQ themes, and 40% contained prominent characters of color. My colleagues across the aisle say that nothing in this legislation will ban books or censor libraries. If this is true, I invite them to support my amendment, which ensures this legislation will not go into effect until the Comptroller General of the United States can confirm that the bill will not lead to censorship or banning books for children or affect learning outcomes for students. Throughout history, the voices of women, persons of color, and members of the LGBTQ community have been suppressed. Their voices, experiences, and stories have been labeled controversial, over-sexual, and even un-American. As a teacher, you do not get to pick the parts of history you deem worthy to teach. When I was a teacher, I told the entire story, honestly, the good and the bad, and gave students the tools that they needed to participate in their communities in a conscientious and productive way. I'll tell you a personal story. My son is currently reading To Kill a Mockingbird, one of the books on this banned book list. In his initial observation of this book, he said, "Mom, they use the N-word a lot. I mean, a lot, and I don't like it." But it opened the door to broader conversations between me and my son about segregation, Jim Crow laws, and led to him asking some very difficult questions of me. But in his final observation of Harper Lee's novel, he said, "But yet and still, Atticus Finch defended Tom Robinson." Through this complex story, his takeaway was not hateful, hurtful, or angry. It was that even then, good people existed. That's what books do. That's how kids learn, not through censorship. Teachers do not have the autonomy to indoctrinate students. Everything we're talking about here today is already published. Budgets are public, curriculums are public, parents are marching in, being a part of our classes. When I was introduced by the ranking member, he mentioned that I was the National Teacher of the Year. That doesn't happen without parent-teacher partnerships. This bill will not improve educational outcomes. This bill caters to a small group of individuals who seek to impose their worldviews on entire school districts, on my child. I ask unanimous consent to add the text of this amendment to the record. I would strongly encourage my colleagues to oppose this bill, and with that, I yield back.